The sun was low in the sky, the kind of sun that doesn't shine brightly anymore, but instead rests tiredly on the horizon. Its light spilled softly over the small town, touching rooftops, old trees, and cracked pavement with a golden calm. The gas station sat just outside town limits. It had been there longer than most people could remember. 2 pumps, a narrow convenience store, a flickering sign that buzzed quietly, like it had something to say, but didn't quite have the strength anymore. Most evenings, nothing happened here, and that was exactly why the Hells Angel noticed when something felt wrong. The motorcycle rolled in slowly, not roaring, not demanding attention, just the steady, a familiar sound of an engine that had carried its rider through decades of highways, losses and lessons. The man riding it was nearing 60. His hair, once dark, was now mostly silver. His beard was thick and neatly trimmed. Though the lines in his face told stories no mirror could fully explain, the leather vest on his back was worn. Not from fashion, but from time. Every crease meant miles. Every scratch meant survival. He parked near the far pump and cut the engine. Silence followed. The kind of silence older people recognize well, not empty, but observant as he removed his helmet. He didn't look for trouble. Trouble had a way of finding him on its own. That was when he noticed the woman. She stood near a dark-colored sedan, just a few yards away at first glance. She didn't seem hurt. She wasn't screaming. She wasn't running, but something about her posture made the biker pause. Her shoulders were tight, raised slightly, as if she were bracing herself against a cold that wasn't there. Her hands shook faintly as she held a small paper-cupped water. Most likely, the cup was full. She hadn't taken a single sip. Standing close beside her was a man in his early 40s, clean clothes, polished, shoes, the kind of man people usually trusted without thinking. Twice he spoke quickly, quietly. Leaning close to her ear, the biker didn't hear the words, but he saw her flinch. That flinch stirred something old inside him, not fear. Recognition. He'd seen it before. In truck stops, in hospital waiting rooms, in places where people tried very hard to pretend everything was normal, the biker walked toward the store entrance, his boots heavy against the concrete as he passed them. The woman lifted her eyes for just a moment, and in that moment, the biker saw it clearly: confusion, fear, and a silent question she didn't know how to ask. Her lips parted. "Sir." The words barely escaped her mouth. Before she could finish, the man snapped loud, sharp, too fast. "She's fine. Back off." The sentence cut through the quiet evening like a slap. The biker stopped walking. He didn't turn right away. People who've lived long lives learn not to react to. Quickly they learn to listen to the space between words. Fine didn't sound like fine. It sounded like control. Slowly, the Hells Angel turned around. He looked at the man first. The man's jaw was tight. His smile was forced. His eyes darted briefly, checking who might be watching. Then the biker looked at the woman. Her face had gone pale. Her hand trembled. More noticeably now, she stared at the ground, as if hoping it would open and swallow her whole. The biker spoke calmly. "No anger, no challenge, ma'am," he said, his voice low and steady. "Are you all right?" The woman swallowed. She opened her mouth, but before a sound could come out, the man stepped forward, placing himself between them. "She doesn't need to talk to you," he said. "She's my wife." The word hung in the air. Wife. The biker nodded slowly. "Then she'll have no trouble answering," he replied. Silence followed. The woman's fingers tightened around the cup until it bent slightly. She finally spoke, her voice thin. I'm just tired." The biker watched closely. People who are tired don't shake like that. They don't look around for exits. They don't whisper please too. Strangers. The man let out a short laugh. "See? Told you." But the biker noticed something else now. a faint discoloration near the woman's wrist, just visible beneath the sleeve of her jacket. A bruise, fresh enough to still carry color, and the way she stood half a step away from the man. Like a person trying not to touch fire, the biker nodded once more. "All right," he said quietly, "just making sure." But he turned and walked away, but he didn't leave. He stood beside his motorcycle, pretending to check his phone, because men like him had learned a long time ago when someone tells you to back off, and you haven't even stepped forward yet, it's usually because they're afraid of what you might see. And somewhere deep inside, the Hell's Angel already knew. This night wasn't over. Before the story continues, take a moment with us. If you believe that experience matters, if you believe quiet courage still exists in this world, then please subscribe to this channel. These stories are told for those who have lived long enough to know. A danger doesn't always shout, and heroes don't always look heroic. Now, let's continue. The Hell's Angel stood beside his motorcycle, one gloved hand resting lightly on the handlebar to anyone watching. He looked like a man checking a message or adjusting something on his bike, but he wasn't reading anything. He was watching. Years on the road had taught him something most people never learned. Real danger doesn't rush. It waits. The man by the sedan kept talking. His voice rose and fell, pretending to sound calm, but every few seconds, his head turned sharply, checking the surroundings. The woman stood quietly now, too quietly. Her shoulders remained tense, and she shifted her weight from one foot to the other, as if standing still hurt more than moving. The biker noticed the sedan's engine was still running. That alone meant something. Gas cost money. People didn't let engines idle unless they planned to leave quickly. He watched the man open the driver's door, then slam it shut again, irritated. Control. The biker thought. Men who needed control always revealed themselves. Through impatience, the woman tried to take a step toward the store. The man blocked her path with a quick movement of his arm. He didn't grab her this time. He didn't need to. The biker felt the familiar tightening in his chest. He'd seen this kind of thing before? Not once, not twice, but enough times to know how it ended when no one paid attention. He remembered a long ago night at a truck stop in Arizona. A woman crying quietly in a bathroom. A man waiting outside, smiling too much. Back then, he had been younger, more reckless, and he had walked away. That memory still sat heavy in his bones. He adjusted his stance and kept watching. Across the lot, the store's front door opened and closed as a couple of customers came and went. No one seemed to notice the tension hanging in the air. That's how these things always happen, in plain sight. The biker finally walked toward the store, not toward them, toward the entrance. As he passed close enough to hear, the woman spoke again. Barely audible, "I don't feel well." The man cut her off immediately. "You're fine. Just sit down." He reached for her elbow. Not hard. Not yet. But the biker saw her flinch again, inside the store. The air smelled of old coffee and cleaning fluid. Behind the counter stood an elderly cashier, her hair pulled back, reading glasses perched low on her nose. She looked up as the biker entered. She had seen him before. Not often, but enough to recognize the calm, serious ones. He placed a few items on the counter. He didn't need a bottle of water, a pack of gum, and paid slowly as the cashier rang him up. He leaned slightly forward. "Ma'am," he said softly, "how long you been working here?" The cashier smiled faintly. 32 years. He nodded. "Then you've learned to trust your eyes." Her smile faded. He didn't point. He didn't explain. He simply said, "If that woman outside tries to come in and looks scared, call the police." The cashier's hand paused on the register. She glanced toward the window. Her face tightened. "I already felt something wasn't right," she whispered. The biker nodded once. Outside again. The man was pacing now. The woman sat on the curb, her head in her hands. The paper cup lay tipped over beside her. water spilling onto the concrete. She still hadn't taken a sip. The biker stopped. A few yards away, close enough to hear, far enough not to provoke, the man crouched in front of the woman. His voice dropped low. "You're embarrassing me," he said. "Up." She shook her head. "I can't." That single word changed everything. The biker felt it. That shift in the air when a situation tips from uncomfortable to dangerous. The man straightened quickly and looked around, his eyes locked on the biker. "What are you still doing here?" he snapped. The biker met his gaze. "Getting gas," he replied calmly. The man laughed, but it sounded hollow. "Then get in your bike and go." The biker didn't move. "Soon," he said. The woman lifted her head. Their eyes met again, this time. She didn't look away, and in that look, the biker saw fear turn into something else. Hope, because she realized she wasn't alone anymore. The man noticed it too, and for the first time, his confidence cracked. He grabbed the woman's wrist, not violently, but firmly enough to leave no doubt. That was when the Hell's Angel took a step forward. Not fast, not angry. Just enough to make his presence impossible to ignore, and somewhere, deep inside the man by the sedan, a quiet alarm began to ring. If stories like this matter to you, stories about paying attention, about stepping in when others turn away, please consider subscribing. Your support keeps these stories alive, stories that remind us what responsibility, awareness, and decency still look like. The next part reveals what happens when a quiet warning is ignored. The Hells Angel took one slow step forward, not in anger, not to threaten, but because there comes a moment in every person's life when standing still becomes a decision of its own. The man's grip tightened around the woman's wrist. She winced. It wasn't dramatic. There was no shouting, and that was what made it dangerous. Most people believe harm announces itself. It rarely does. The biker's voice remained calm. "Let her go." The man laughed sharply. "Mind your own business." The biker didn't raise his voice. "I am." The woman's breathing quickened. Her free hand clutched the fabric of her coat as if holding herself together. Around them, cars came and went. Headlights passed. Engines. Humme. Fucking life continued. That was the strangest part. The man leaned closer to the biker. "You don't know who you're dealing with?" The Hell's Angel nodded. "I know enough." He glanced at the woman, and so does she. The man followed his gaze. That's when he realized something had shifted. The woman was no longer looking at the ground. She was looking at the biker. And more importantly, she was listening. The man released her wrist suddenly, stepping back half a pace. Not out of kindness, out of fear. Because when control starts slipping, panic follows close behind. The biker stood between them now, not blocking, not shielding, just present. And sometimes, presence is everything. A quiet word to the listener at this point in the story. It's worth pausing for just a moment. If you've lived long enough to recognize this situation, if you've ever noticed something not quite right and trusted that feeling, then you already understand why these stories are told. They are reminders, not entertainment. If you value stories about awareness, responsibility, it's the kind of courage that doesn't shout, you're welcome here, and you're invited to stay. The man glanced toward the road, then toward the store. He was calculating now. The biker could see it in his eyes. Men like this always calculate. "We're leaving," the man said suddenly. He reached for the woman again. This time, Hell's Angel didn't wait. The man's hand moved again, not fast, not sudden. That was what made it dangerous. People often imagine violence as loud and chaotic. In reality, it usually begins quietly with a decision. The Hell's Angel saw it the instant before it. It happened, the tightening of the jaw, the slight shift of weight. The breath held just a fraction too long. Experience had taught him this moment. "Don't," he said calmly. The word wasn't a threat. It was a warning. The man ignored it. His fingers closed around the woman's arm once more. This time higher up, closer to the shoulder. Her body stiffened. "You're coming with me." he said through clenched teeth. The woman shook her head slowly, deliberately. Double quotes. No. She said the word was quiet, but it landed harder than a shout, for the first time since the biker had arrived. The man looked genuinely surprised. People like him were not used to hearing that word, not spoken that way. The Hell's Angel stepped closer. He did not grab the man. He did not raise his fists. Instead, he placed himself directly between them. A simple act, a powerful one. She said no, he stated. The man scoffed. You think you're some kind of hero? The biker met his eyes. No, he replied. I think you're making a mistake. The woman took a step back, putting distance between herself and the man. That movement changed everything. The man lunged forward, trying to reclaim what he believed he had lost control. The Hell's Angel reacted instantly. He caught the man's wrist, firmly, not violently, just enough to stop him. The grip was practiced, efficient. It was the grip of someone who had learned long ago how to end a situation without escalating it. The man froze. Not because he was hurt, but because he suddenly understood something important. This was not a man to test. Let go of me, the man hissed. The biker leaned in slightly, his voice low enough that only the two of them could hear. You're done, he said, and you know it. The man's eyes darted around the parking lot. More people had stopped now, a driver lingering at the pump, someone exiting the store slowly, watching witnesses. That was never part of the plan. The woman stood several steps away, her back straight now. Her fear hadn't vanished, but it had changed. It had turned into resolve. She spoke again, louder this time. I don't know this man. The words echoed across the concrete. The cashier inside the store picked up the phone. The man's face drained of color. She's confused, he snapped. She's not well. The Hell's Angel released the man's wrist, not because he trusted him, but because he didn't need to hold on anymore. The truth was already moving faster than either of them. Then the police can help sort it out, the biker said evenly. The word police landed like a weight. The man took a step back, then another. This is ridiculous, he muttered. He turned toward the sedan too quickly. That urgency told its own story. The biker raised his voice, not loud, but clear. You're not leaving. The man stopped for a long moment. No one moved. Engines idled. Lights buzzed overhead. Time stretched. And in that stretched silence, something important happened. The woman realized she was being heard, and the man realized he was not. A gentle reminder to the listener moments. Like this rarely look dramatic. They look ordinary. That's why they're so easy to miss. If you've ever trusted your instincts, if you've ever stepped in when something felt wrong, then you understand the weight of this moment. And you understand why paying attention still matters. The sound of distant sirens began to rise, faint at first, then clearer. The man turned pale. His shoulders slumped just slightly, the first sign of defeat. The Hell's Angel stepped back, giving the woman space. Stay where you are, he told her gently. She nodded. The man whispered under his breath, This didn't have to happen. The biker looked at him steadily. It did, he said, because you chose it. The sirens grew louder, and for the first time that evening, the outcome was no longer in doubt. The first police car rolled into the gas station with its lights flashing softly. It's not screaming, not rushing, just present. Then another followed. The sirens shut off. And with that silence, the balance of power shifted completely. The man by the sedan stood frozen. His hands were visible now, though no one had asked him to raise them yet. That alone said enough. The woman sat on the low concrete barrier near the store, her arms wrapped around herself as if holding on to the last pieces of calm she had. The Hell's Angel stood a short distance away. He had stepped back, not because he was done caring, but because moments like this belonged to truth, not force. One of the officers approached the group slowly, experienced. Measured double quotes evening, he said. We got a call about a disturbance. The man spoke immediately, too quickly. This is all a misunderstanding, he said, forcing a smile. My wife's not feeling well. The officer didn't respond right away. He looked past the man, at the woman. Ma'am, he asked gently, Do you know this man? The question hung in the air. The woman swallowed. She glanced once at the Hell's Angel. He said nothing, did nothing. He simply stood still, giving her the space. She had not been given all evening. No, she said. One word clear, steady. The man laughed nervously. She's confused, insisted. She's been under a lot of stress. The second officer walked toward the sedan. He looked inside, then at the trunk. Mind if we take a look? The man hesitated. That hesitation was everything. I'd rather you didn't, he replied. The officer nodded. Then we will. The trunk opened. Inside were items that had no reasonable explanation. Zip ties, duct tape, a folded blanket. The air felt heavier. The woman closed her eyes. The first officer turned back to the man. Sir, he said calmly, I'm going to need you to turn around. The man's shoulders slumped. All the confidence he'd carried just an hour earlier had drained away. She was fine, he muttered. She didn't say anything. The Hell's Angel spoke for the first time since the police arrived. His voice was steady. She tried, said. You didn't listen. The officer placed the man in handcuffs. No struggle, no shouting. Just the sound of metal clicking shut. Consequences don't need drama. They arrive quietly, just like danger does. The woman was guided gently into the store. The cashier brought her a chair and a cup of water this time. She drank. Her hands still trembled, but less now. The officer asked her questions slowly. Where she had been. What she remembered. She explained. How the man had offered help. How her head had started to feel heavy. How things had gone blurry. She stopped once, taking a deep breath. I didn't know how to say no, she whispered. The officer nodded. You did, he said. You just needed time. Outside, the Hell's Angel sat on the curb. The weight in his chest eased slightly, not because the night had ended well, but because it had ended honestly. Another officer approached him. You could have walked away, he said. The biker nodded. I almost did, he replied. The officer studied him for a moment. Glad you didn't. A moment of reflection. Stories like this don't end with celebration. They end with understanding. That danger often wears a friendly face. That fear doesn't always scream. And that sometimes the most important thing a person can do is simply stay. If you're still listening, it's because you understand that. Because life has taught you the value of paying attention. The woman stepped outside again. Wrapped in a blanket, she looked at the Hells. Angel, thank you, she said, quietly, for not leaving. Someone once told me the same, he replied. The police car doors closed. The sedan was towed away. The gas station returned to its quiet hum, but nothing about the night would ever be the same, because one sentence, she's fine, back off, had revealed far more than the man ever intended. The police cars disappeared down the road, their lights fading into the distance, until the night reclaimed its quiet. The gas station looked the same as it always had. The pumps still emanated, the flickering signs still buzzed, cars still came and went. But for those who had been there, something had changed. The woman sat on a plastic chair just inside the store doorway, a blanket draped gently over her shoulders. The cashier stood nearby, pretending to organize shelves while never taking her eyes off her. Outside, the Hell's Angel leaned against his motorcycle. The adrenaline had passed. Now what remained was the familiar weight that followed moments like this, the understanding that doing the right thing doesn't always feel heroic. It just feels necessary. The woman stepped outside slowly. She walked carefully, as if the ground itself needed to be tested. When she reached the biker, she stopped. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, she broke the silence. I kept thinking someone would notice, she said. I didn't think it would be you. The biker smiled faintly. Most people don't, he replied. They notice later. She nodded. I almost didn't say anything, she admitted. I thought I was overreacting. The biker shook his head gently. You weren't, he said. Your instincts were trying to protect you. She looked down at her hands. I didn't want to cause trouble. He exhaled slowly. Trouble was already there. He said, you just shined a light on it. Stood quietly for a while. The night air was cool now. Crickets chirped in the distance. Moments like this didn't need many words. Finally, the woman asked, why did you stay? The Hell's Angel thought for a long moment. Because once, he said, a long time ago. I didn't. She didn't press him. Some stories are meant to stay unfinished, eh? I thought for those listening, many people who hear stories like this say the same thing. I don't know what I would have done. The truth is, you already do. Life teaches us quietly, through years, through moments. We wish we'd handled differently. If you're listening to this story, it's because you've lived long enough to understand that awareness is a responsibility, and that sometimes simply staying is an act of courage. The cashier came outside and handed the woman a small paper bag. Something warm, she said. Softly, the woman smiled for the first time that night. Thank you. The Hell's Angel put on his helmet before climbing onto his bike. He looked at the woman once more. You're going to be all right, he said. She nodded because someone paid attention. Mounted the motorcycle and started the engine. The sound was steady, grounded, as he pulled away. The woman watched until the red taillight disappeared down the set road. She felt something new then. Not fear, not relief, but certainty. The gas station returned to silence. But the lesson stayed. That danger often hides behind confident words. That she's fine can mean anything but, and that the quietest voices sometimes carry the most truth. Final reflection. If this story stayed with you, if it reminded you of moments you've seen or moments you wish you'd acted on, then it has done what it was meant to do. These stories exist to remind us that awareness doesn't fade with age. It sharpens, and that wisdom, when used, can still save a life.